Well, everyone, you already know what time it is. I do apologize if the audio sounds better or worse. If it sounds better, then that's fine. But if it sounds worse, then I'm trying to change up the audio a little bit. But dude, I haven't talked about a Game Boy Micro in so long. It's actually been about a year since I even purchased this thing. And I purchased it one time. I made that video I made last year, and I haven't even made it since then or even talked about it since then. So I figured, here we go. Let's go ahead and kind of recap and see how the Game Boy Micro holds up a full 15 years later. Now, this is not like me saying if it's still worth it or not, because obviously it's more than just worth it. It's a collector's item at the end of the day. And for someone like me, I've owned pretty much every single portable Nintendo console, and I think I've owned every single non-portable Nintendo console as well, except like those super old ones, like the first ones or whatever. But I haven't necessarily reviewed all of them. I'm still in the process of doing it. Back in the day, I owned the original Game Boy Advance when I was little, but it wasn't really mine. It was like one of my family members, so I didn't really like use it that much. My first actual console that I owned was the Nintendo DS Lite, and I still own that exact same one. It's one of my favorite consoles ever. But with the Game Boy Micro, I heard so much about it, and it's honestly like one of a super interesting device, because it came out in 2005. When it came out, it was, I guess it was taking over the Game Boy Advance SP in a way, but it really wasn't. And it was like the last Game Boy device ever. And I'll be surprised, dude. I thought these things were going to cost like $15 or something like that, like a Game Boy Advance SP. I mean, I purchased Nintendo 3DSs and Nintendo DSs. I bought a Nintendo DSi for like $15, so I wasn't expecting the Game Boy Micro to be more than that. But I literally spent $70 on this thing last year, which is insane. That's an insane amount of money to spend on something that I'm never going to use. Like, I literally bought it for the video and then that was it. So if you want something that can give you more functionality, of course, if you can go buy a Nintendo DSi, but I think this is more of a collector's item at the end of the day, and I think that $70 was the cheapest one. That was with no accessories. I have no faceplate on mine either, as you can see. So the funny thing was, back in the day, and I said this last year, it's like going from one product to the other, they usually don't make a device smaller when it's a successor. Like, we're in a trend now where we want like the biggest devices and we want the biggest phones and the biggest laptops. If you look at something like the Nintendo Switch Lite that came out after I made that video last year, that was a smaller version, but it wasn't taking over the Nintendo Switch. It was the Lite version, which is super important to note. Maybe the next version of the Nintendo Switch will be bigger or have a bigger screen or something like that, where in this case they actually made it smaller, which is kind of funny. And like I said last year, Nintendo still has the Game Boy Micro page up on their site, which, you know, they actually advertise what the Game Boy Micro brought at the time, and I don't think you can buy it anymore from their website, but it's still really cool. Now, Nintendo actually brought a lot of cool things with this specific gaming console. The screen was backlit like the Game Boy Advance SP. You could charge it, which was really, really cool. But the coolest thing about this phone was the customizability of it. You were able to go and customize the front plates, which were super cool. Now, for something like that, nowadays, we don't really have that. We have skins and everything. But if you look at the Nintendo Switch, actually, that's kind of a similar. You can change the Switch colors. You can change a lot of things. You're going to end up buying a ton of Switch Joy-Cons because they break all the time. But that's still kind of a cool thing that it had that capability back then. And, you know, that stuff really hasn't really aged up too well. Most people don't really care about those things anymore. But that's still kind of funny that back in the day, that was one of the selling features of this phone, was the customizability of it. And what I find even more interesting was that this thing actually came out after the original Nintendo DS. So kind of keep that in mind. This thing wasn't really taking over any like Game Boy Advance SP, or it wasn't taking over like the Nintendo lineup. They weren't trying to sell Game Boys anymore. I'm not really too sure why they still made this, because the Nintendo DS was, you know, came out before this thing. So I don't really get it. I mean, in a way, it does make sense. The Nintendo DS was more expensive at the time, but still, I would rather spend more money on a Nintendo DS than get a Game Boy Micro. If I was getting a Game Boy Micro at that time, I would probably just go get a Game Boy Advance SP for cheaper, if you know what I mean. So, but the size at the time and now is pretty much what sold it at the time. I mean, people love the portability of it, and I honestly can't blame them. It's a solid little console. You still have, you know, all that game selection. You can go for it. There's so many things going on with this device that, you know, at the end of the day, yeah, it's like not the best looking thing anymore, and yes, it's super small, but at that time, people didn't really want the biggest, latest, and greatest. If they wanted that, they would go for a Nintendo DS. But at that time, you know, it was either the Game Boy Micro or the Nintendo DS, and most people wanted something smaller and cheaper, which was really cool. But apparently, from what I've read and everything, it really didn't sell too well, mostly because it didn't really support backwards compatibility to the Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, which, you know, unlike the Game Boy Advance SP and the original Game Boy Advance could actually do. So that was one of the biggest disadvantages, and the Nintendo DS at the time could do backwards compatibility with the Game Boy Advance games. So I guess people more so were buying the DS at the time rather than the Game Boy Micro. Probably what I would recommend them doing at the end of the day. So game selection collection, it really wasn't small, but it was limited for sure. The older consoles could do things that the newer ones, the more expensive ones couldn't at the time. And basically the Game Boy Color and Game Boy backwards compatibility, you didn't have that capability on the Game Boy Micro, which is literally insane, which the cheaper ones did have, which is crazy. So overall, I mean, to kind of sum up this video, I love and I appreciate the Game Boy Micro. Was it the best Nintendo console ever? Not really. I mean, it's definitely an interesting console for sure. I feel like the Game Boy Advance SP was a way more important console at the end of the day. So I'm not going to tell you if it's still worth it or not, because for the right person, it's still completely worth it. It's a collector's item at the end of the day. It's not really like a super crazy console to me. Like if you're like a Nintendo fanatic or something, or a collector, you might want to add this to your collection. But these things are super rare and they're not extremely hard to get, but they're just a little bit more expensive than if you wanted like a Nintendo DSi or Nintendo DSi XL or even a Nintendo 3DS. But I've really only seen them sold on eBay, and that's probably the best way to go about it. These things remind me so much of the PSP Go, because the PSP Go's are still super expensive to buy too. Those are more expensive than PS Vitas, which is so crazy. So, and that really pretty much covers it. I like the Game Boy Micro. I like all Nintendo consoles. I like all gaming consoles. I feel like every single one brought something else to the table. So if you guys have any questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those things are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.